Hi there, my name is Caitlin Bandy and this is my channel BandysBooks, and today I am here to review my boyfriend Oz's picks for me. Earlier this month he picked out 3 books for me to read. I had absolutely no input on what he was picking, aside from the fact that if it was a series it had to be the first book in the series and it couldn't be a book I'd already read. So we went to our local bookshop, the Writer's Block, we walked around and he scanned the shelves for things that he thought I should read. And it's been quite the experience. I've done these types of videos previously with friends from Bookstagram and BookTube, but in that case, it was people that are readers that know what's popular, what's out there, what's exciting. Oz doesn't really read very much, so he has no idea what the contemporary books are, what's exciting, what might be on my TBR already. He does help me record my videos and he does help me stage photos for Instagram and things like that sometimes, but I don't know that he pays a ton of attention to what I'm reading all the time. If you haven't seen the first video where he picks out the books, maybe go check that out. You can find the link up here. So that being said, let's go ahead and talk about the 3 books. The first book we're going to talk about is The Kingdom of Sand by Andrew Holleran. This currently has a 3.58 and about 924 reviews on Goodreads. So this book follows a main character who remains nameless throughout the story. He moves to Florida to care for his dying, aging parents. And after their deaths, he just never leaves. He stays in their homes and he kind of becomes very isolated. And he really only has one friend. There is a man named Earl that he met 20 years in the past, and they have a habit of getting together to watch old classic movies and keep each other company. As Earl ages and becomes sick, and it's clear that Earl is kind of at the end of his life, this unnamed main character kind of shuts down and becomes sort of jealous of Earl and his situation. It's a very strange dynamic. I had mixed feelings about this book. While I appreciated the look at the end of life and social isolation and how we can get trapped in unhealthy cycles, I didn't necessarily love our main character. I think that he's meant to be difficult, and sometimes I do struggle with difficult characters. In this particular instance, he was kind of a whiny, hard to relate to character. He, on one hand, has completely socially isolated himself, but on the other hand is whining about how lonely he is and doing nothing to change it. And at a certain point, you're like, if you're this miserable, why don't you try something different? I also felt the jealousy that our main character experiences very hard to relate to as well. I think he really wanted to control and dominate Earl's time and his attention, and it just came across again very unhealthy. And I mean, I think that's the point. He's supposed to be unhealthy. He's not supposed to be in a great place or exploring how he gets as isolated as he is. But for me, it was just a difficult read. I didn't love being in his mind. I didn't love what he was thinking about. I didn't love the way that he expressed it. There were parts that were funny. I did appreciate some of the gallows humor that's in there, but overall for me, this was probably a 3-star read. The second book that Oz picked out for me is Black Chameleon, Memory, Womanhood, and Myth by Deborah D.E.E.P. Mouton. This book follows Deborah. It's her memoir, and it follows her from childhood all the way to motherhood, and it tells her story with a mix of mythology, beautiful prose and lyricism, and a look at what it means to be a Black woman in America. This is currently rated at a 4.41 with about 41 ratings on Goodreads so far. This is a pretty new release. I really enjoyed this book. Deborah's writing is so lyrical and poetic. The prose is stunning, and that made for a really enjoyable experience. And it's an interesting contrast because she talks about some really difficult topics. As I mentioned in the summary, she's talking mostly about what it means to be a Black woman in America and the anxieties that come with transitioning from childhood into adulthood into motherhood. And it's interesting because it's so dark in some places, but written in such a beautiful way. I really love that contrast. I think that there was a lot that was really relatable to this, but there was also things that were challenging and made me think about things in a perspective that I might not have considered before. I think that this is a memoir that most people should read and most people will likely enjoy. I gave it about a 4.5 stars. And the third book that Oz picked for me was Guardians of the Valley, John Muir and the Friendship That Saved Yosemite by Dean King. This book currently has a 4.06 and about 85 ratings on Goodreads so far. Now, this is a nonfiction book, and I have noticed that when I've asked Oz to pick out books for me in the past, he always likes to include at least one nonfiction book. This book is set in June 1889 in San Francisco. John Muir ends up meeting his longtime editor, Robert Underwood Johnson, and it starts a friendship that's going to span decades. Muir had visited Yosemite 20 years prior, and it was a place that he really loved, so he takes Johnson there, and the two of them are heartbroken and shocked to find the valley destroyed by mining, logging, and tourism. Muir is grief-stricken by the changes, but Johnson sets off to battle via the pages of the Century magazine, which he uses to publish content about the goings-ons of the day. This collaboration between the two of them on Yosemite Valley and nature and preserving it is what saved Yosemite and created the national park that we have today. This book is really fascinating. I found that at moments it could be a little bit dry or heavy because it is nonfiction, it is relating a lot of information. But overall, I found the writing style to be accessible, easy to understand, and the topic is super interesting. If you're interested in nature, you're interested in hiking, you're interested in John Muir, you're interested in the national parks, you're interested in nature conservation, anything like that, you will likely find this book very interesting, as I did. I think that Oz initially picked this up because we're both really into hiking and nature. We camp a lot, we hike a lot, we've gone to a lot of the national parks together, and we have plans to visit more of them soon, hopefully. So I think he thought I would definitely enjoy this, and he was right. I loved learning more about Yosemite. I grew up in California, so John Muir is a name that most Californians that are involved in nature are super familiar with, but it was really interesting to learn about this specific portion of his history and how he was so instrumental in protecting Yosemite and creating the space that we have there today. I also would give this a 4.5. I think if the writing had been slightly more engaging in some places, it could have been a 5-star for me based on the content and all the information, but it was still a really good read. And again, if you're interested in nature at all, I would recommend it. So overall, I think that Oz did a really good job picking out books for me, especially when you consider that he is not a big reader himself. I guess that I've learned from this experiment that Oz pays more attention to what I read than what I thought. He picked really well. He picked books that had topics that interested me, things that were relevant to current events, things that relate to my own life personally, or things that might challenge my own life views. All things that I really enjoyed, and I really enjoyed this experiment. So I think down the road, maybe we'll have him pick books for me again in the future. Super excited that this worked out well. So if you like this video, hit the thumbs up and comment down below. Let me know, how do you think Oz did picking the books? Are any of these 3 books on your radar, or now having heard about them, would you consider reading them? And if you're not already subscribed to this channel, you know what to do. Hit the subscribe button down below, as well as the notification bell so that you never miss a video and we can see each other again soon. Thanks so much for joining. Bye.